Are you a good communicator? How do you know? That question can go in lots of different directions, but today I want us to think about the side of this communication paradigm that is not the speaker, but is the listener. The first thing that we understand, this first principle that impacts this idea of listening, is that our perception shapes our reality. This isn't to say that your perception is reality, but rather that how can you know what is real and true? That's a heavy and loaded question. How do you know when you have understood something for what it is? Think back to our conversation about semiotics and the semiotic triangle of symbols and reference and thoughts. How do you know when you have understood the symbols someone else has used to really understand what they've thought? You can back up from there. How do you know you have understood with your thoughts an object? This is tricky. Does it mean there's no such thing as reality? As absolute truth? The idea that perception shapes our reality means that the way in which we engage with the world helps us construct an idea about the world. It's like two people looking at the same object from a different vantage point. Their perception is going to shape what they believe to be true about that object. If this is the case, that our perception shapes our reality, is there a definitive answer to this question? What is true about this object? That might be the wrong question to ask. The right question to ask might be, why does the other person see the object the way that they're seeing? And what other alternative interpretations might there be for this event, this person, this reality? Don't cling so tightly to your interpretation that you close out anybody else's perception as being a valid interpretation. When we engage in communication, because we can't perfectly distill a thought or a referent into a symbol, we are going to have issues where our perception shapes our reality. So, when you communicate then, be careful that you don't think you've communicated perfectly. You've distilled perfectly everything that you wanted to communicate, because what a person thinks they hear is what they believe. Now, I think it's really important when we're talking about listening to assume that there might be other interpretations, other meanings, even if it's just for a moment, even if it's longer than a moment. Stop and ask yourself, what do I know about this person? What do I know about the context? What could they mean? What is the most generous interpretation? Have you ever interacted with somebody and you feel like they're just not doing their best? Maybe they're a flake. Maybe they aren't very good at their job or what they're doing. And as time goes on, that idea begins to solidify that maybe they're lazy, or maybe it's a character defect. And then come to find out later, maybe they were experiencing some serious trauma, or maybe they were struggling with their own identity and trying to figure out how to be themselves in their workplace. When we jump to conclusions, when we don't give the most generous read, we limit the people that we interact with. We constrain them. We slap a label and say, based off of what I've seen and heard, this is who you are. And we can make some errors. We can start to become biased. It can become harder to see an alternative narrative if we're always telling ourselves the same story. When we think about this in an organization, what it means is that as you are listening to those around you in order to do your job better, you should ask clarifying questions if you don't understand. And don't assume that you have perfectly communicated just because there aren't any questions. A person's perception of what you said can become what they know about you, whether it's true or not. But there's something else about listening that I think is really important, especially as you think about entering an organization, maybe at an entry-level position. And that is listening as a function of power. When you don't have power in an organization, oftentimes what that means is that most of your communication is listening. You may have to report from time to time, but listening might be your primary responsibility in meetings or when you're interacting with a supervisor. And listening could become a way of gaining power. As you understand your audience better through listening, you can better create products, meetings, engagements with your supervisors or customers in a way that increases your standing in the organization or your reputation in the organization. But we also understand that a good listener can be a good leader. And that a good leader is often someone who listens well because they understand the needs of their customers, their board, their employees in a way that helps them serve those people better. Listening is a responsibility, but it is also powerful. So think about, who are you listening to? And how is that shaping your perception of the world around you? In an organizational setting, how much time are you spending dedicated to listening and giving the most generous listen? Listening in a way that doesn't include your biases, but includes different ways of interpreting the information that you're hearing. Because you never know what someone else is experiencing. Be careful not to limit your understanding of truth and reality by not engaging with the people around you and asking good questions and listening well.